In this presentation, we will go over the Federal Program Compliance Division's 2022-2023 Program Monitoring Random Validations process for Phase 2. Phase 2 of the Random Validations process includes the following programs administered in the Federal Program Compliance Division: EdFlex, Title I Part A Campus School-Wide Program Eligibility Waiver; Title I Part D, Prevention and Intervention for Delinquent, Neglected, and At-Risk Youth; Title V Part B, the Rural and Low-Income Schools Program; Private School Equitable Services; and the Unsafe School Choice option. We will now take a look at the number of LEAs selected to participate in the Phase 2 random validation process. For the EdFlex waiver, 5 LEAs with 5 campuses will be selected. For the Title I Part D program, 20 LEAs will be selected. For the Title V Part B program, 30 LEAs will be selected. And for the Private School Equitable Services, 23 LEAs will be selected. And for the Unsafe School Choice option, 40 LEAs will be selected. The selection method for EdFlex waiver, Title I Part D, and Title V Part B will be LEAs randomly selected from across the state regardless of their ESC region. For Private School Equitable Services, there will be 0 to 2 LEAs per ESC region selected. And for Unsafe School Choice option, there will be 2 LEAs per ESC region selected. We will now take a look at the number of selected program requirements for each of the programs. For the EdFlex waiver, there's only one requirement. For Title I Part D, there will also be only one requirement. For Title V Part B, there will only be one requirement. For Private School Equitable Services, there will be 4 requirements. However, each LEA selected to participate in the Private School Equitable Services random validation will only be required to submit documentation for one of the requirements that they have been notified that they will be selected for. And for Unsafe School Choice option, there is only one requirement. We will now take a detailed look at the actual program requirements selected. For the EdFlex Title I Part A School-Wide Program Eligibility Waiver, we will be looking at the supporting documentation form. If your LEA has been selected for the Title I Part D program, you will be required to submit the formal agreement. If you were selected for Title V Part B, we will be looking at use of funds. As previously mentioned, for Private School Equitable Services, each LEA selected to participate in the random validation for this requirement will be selected to submit documentation for only one of the following 4 requirements: LEA documented equitable services administration amounts, timely and meaningful consultation, LEA documented PMP equitable services amounts, and LEA maintained inventory control of purchases for PNP equitable services. And for the Unsafe School Choice option, we will be looking at the USCO policy. Please note that this is just a very brief description of the requirements, but under the training resources, there are videos that go over the requirements, specifically the program requirements and the documentation that will be required to be submitted for each of these requirements. There's also an accompanying handbook for each of the requirements that provides additional information. So be sure to take a look at our resources to gather more information and details related to what is being requested for submission by the LEA if they're selected to participate in any of the Phase 2 programs that we are including in our random validation process. So now, in summary, as you can see, these are the programs that we are going to be validating as Phase 2. Each LEA selected will only be selected to participate in one of these program random validations. So for the EdFlex waiver, again, we're looking at 5 LEAs that will be submitting documentation for one requirement. Title I Part D, we're looking at 20 LEAs submitting documentation for one requirement. Title V Part B, 30 LEAs submitting documentation for one requirement. Private school equitable services, 23 LEAs will be selected from across the state. They will submit for one of 4 requirements. And for unsafe school choice option, we have 40 LEAs that will submit documentation for one requirement. Again, the selection method for the first 3 programs, EdFlex Waiver, Title I Part D, and Title V Part B, will be randomly selected from across the state regardless of the ESC region. For private school equitable services, 0 to 2 LEAs per ESC region have been selected, and for unsafe school choice option, 2 LEAs per ESC region have been selected. We will now take a look at some key dates related to the 22-23 Random Validation Phase 2 process. On November 28th, LEAs that have been selected to participate will be notified via an email generated by the Federal Program Compliance Division Random Validation Work App system. The LEA contacts that are part of the Department of Grants and Compliance Administration Work App or Smart Sheets Work App will be the individuals that will receive the notification. Between November 29th and December 12th, Regional Education Service Centers will offer and provide technical assistance to LEAs that have been selected to participate. By December 12th, LEAs should submit their documentation using the Federal Program Compliance Random Validation Work App. By February 3rd, TEA will complete their documentation review. TEA will meet with Education Service Center federal program staff to discuss preliminary results between February 20th and March 3rd. And TEA will then notify LEAs of their results through a Random Validation Work App generated email. This concludes the overview of the random validation process for Phase 2. If you have any questions, please reach out to us via telephone, via the division phone number of 512-463-9499, or via our division email address, which is essasupport@tea.texas.gov. Thank you.